What's going on, guys? Raymond here. I'm back with another video. So in this video we are going to look at lists and keys. So let's get started. So I've opened up Visual Studio Code and I'll just put this side by side so that you guys can be able to see. Okay, let me just make this a little bit smaller. So I've already run a React application just by saying npx create react-app, then in the dot, then you can go ahead and do that and just clean up the application like I showed you in the previous videos. Then let's code along. Okay, so let me just show you the things that we're going to do. Just the lists and keys. We're going to look at how we can create and display lists using arrays as well as objects, and how we can render them. Okay, so let's get started. So on top here I'm just going to define a variable. So I'll just call this variable as just let me say books. So this book is going to be an array of books. So just say let me just put programming languages, which is React. Then the next one will be C#, and the other one just put Java. Okay, so we have an array of lists. So how can we display this? So to display that, we always use the map method. You can use the for loop, it works just fine, but the common one and recommended one is just the map method. Now the first thing is to open the curly parentheses like that. So once you do that, then you're going to write the name of this list that you want to display, which is books. Then you say .map, then there you can run a callback function. There are a few options that you can try. The first one is to run a callback function and loop through those lists. So let me show you that one first. So we are going to have in there, you can call this as anything. So you can call it class, you can call it people, you can call it whatever name you want to call it, it doesn't matter. But for simplicity's sake, let me just call that for each book. Then we are going to return here. Make sure what you are returning, you wrap it in HTML. Okay, in HTML attribute. So let's wrap this in an attribute, which is a paragraph. Then to loop through again, whenever we are writing React in JSX, I mean JavaScript in JSX, we use this curly parentheses, we'll wrap everything in that. Then you can just display that particular book. And when you see, you're going to see that we have React, C# and Java. Okay, this is one method. The other alternative that we can use, instead of just wrapping this here, actually this is just arrow function syntax. So we can open up this curly parentheses, then return. Use the return. Let me just save that so that we don't have anything there. We return. So here we can return, maybe let's say h4. So after that, if we want to call that book again, open those curly parentheses and put that book in. And now you're going to see we have React, C# as well as Java. Okay. Now let me mention that if you write the keyword return, they should be in the same line like this. Okay, Now when you put this down here, you just cut that and put it down here, and now you're going to see that it's not going to work, because when you're doing that, it should be in the same line as that. That's when it's going to work. The other thing that I'm going to show you guys is, if you want to return something down there, you need to open this parentheses, then down there you can return a parent div. So parent one, you can just say div. I don't know why I'm not having suggestions. Okay, so you can return a parent div. Now here you need to wrap up everything that you need to write should be just within that div. So you can say let me return a paragraph, which is a p tag. Then again, whenever I want to write JavaScript, you can just return that particular book, and when we save, it's going to work just fine. Okay, now when you write something out of this div and display it, is not going to work, because everything should be wrapped in that parent div. Okay, so that's one way we can display a list of arrays in React. So the next thing that I'm going to show you guys is how we can display an array of objects, which is commonly used. So we can have the same const, let's have names is equal to, now this is an array, and within that array we are going to have objects. That's what it means by array of objects. So we can have first name, so we can have this name as Raymond, and you put a comma if you want to add another thing. Then let's call this as yay of Beth, but we'll just say yay, maybe 2022. Now to include another object, you need to put a comma here, and we can now call that one as well name. Then let's call this as John, and yay, let's put this as 2023. Okay, so let's save this. So I'll just comment this out because we'll need it later maybe. Then I'll just remove everything here. I'll just comment them again. Okay, let's save. Now again, to display this list here of names, we need to open curly parentheses. That's the first thing that you need to do. Okay, so let's do that. So open curly parentheses like that. Then you look through. Then you call those names. Then a map method. Then you run a callback function. You can name this anything. Let's call them as names. Then this can be equal to. So just use that method where we can return. We can wrap everything in a parent div HTML. So I'll just say div. Then we can wrap through. So we'll just call those that name. Now when we do that, we see that we are not going to be successful. Okay, so reason being, we need to use what is known as a dot operator where we can access this. Okay, so let me just change this name to person so that we can have some distinction between those properties. Okay, so here I'll just call that person dot. So to use the dot, which means we can now access these properties here from the object, which is dot name, and save. Now you're going to see we have Raymond and John. Okay, so this is how we can loop through. There are other syntax of looping through. You can go ahead and do that, but just know that you are going to use the map method, as well as you are going to have either an object and a list, and maybe an array. Okay, so you are going to see different syntax as you code, and some of them could be nested objects, but just remember that you'll be using the map method to loop through. Okay, so you can even put this in maybe, let's say, in a paragraph or in a list. You can say li, then save that. You are going to see that it's going to display those as a list. Okay, now the next thing you can display is the other list. Can be that person, then dot. You can see even here what you want to pop up, but we want yay. Okay, then you close that and you save. Now you are going to see we have Raymond and the year 2022. Okay, so that's how we do that, and we can even put plain text here. Maybe we can just say name, and here we can put year if you want, just to show that. And you see we are going to have name Raymond year 2022, name John year 2023. Okay, now the last thing that I want to talk about, guys, is as you can see, we are going to have a warning here which says each child in a list should have a unique key prop. Okay, this will work just fine even with this warning, but as the application becomes complex, React is going to display these according to the list because it's keeping track of this. Now it wants to make sure that each of these lists are unique. So to make these unique, whenever you see this warning, just make sure you have to know that you need to put in a key or an ID for these. Each of these should have an ID. So whenever you see this, even if you have put an ID, you're still seeing this, check your ID. So one way to add an ID is just by including it here. So I'll just say ID of 2. Then this one, I'll just give it an ID of 1. Okay, now when we save, nothing is going to happen because we are not using it. So where do we put the ID? So the ID, we wrap it up with the div, in the div, parent div, which is wrapping all of these. So the parent div, it's this one. Okay, so here we can say key is equal to, we open curly parentheses like that. Then what we are looking for is this person. So the person that we are looping through, dot, then you give them dot ID. Now when you save and when you refresh, that's the last time you are going to see that warning in your life. Okay, so we can just go through this, and you can hover on the code to see. It's part of learning to see what the code is saying as well. Okay, so thank you so much for viewing this video, and see you in the next video.